We're going to call this meeting to order.
Roll call. We'll start with Mayor Bruin, who's on the line.
Here.
Mr. Heyman.
Present.
Mr. Rajaratnam.
Present.
Ms. Breeden. Present. We have 4 present with Mr. Blades absent, and we will be doing roll call votes all night rather than the clickers because Eric's on the line, just so you know.
And these will be verbal
Verbal
roll call. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next we have the approval of the agenda.
Second.
Mayor Bruin.
Aye.
Mr. Heyman.
Aye.
Mr. Rajaratnam.
Aye.
Ms. Breeden.
Aye.
4 ayes with Mr. Blades absent. We have a quorum. Or it passes. Sorry.
Okay, so next, if you'll follow me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Face flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in prayer. Lord, thank you for giving us this beautiful day. Thank you for this town of Ridgecrest we live and cherish. Lord, we pray for our country. Give our leaders your wisdom for them to govern this country in the right way, Lord. Lord, let this country be a beacon to many other countries. Lord, I pray for the troops who are in harm's way. Protect them from all evil. I pray for our police department. Lord, their lives are on line from the time they leave the house and get back to the house. Protect them from all evil as they serve this community. I pray for our Ridgecrest Regional Hospital, which serves this community. Lord, pray for the doctors and nurses who have worked round the clock during the COVID time to save so many lives. Lord, thank you for the opportunity to have their services in this community. Lord, bless each one of us here. Bless the City Council. Lord, as we discuss so many issues which are relevant to this community, give us your guidance and let our decisions be useful to this community. In Jesus' precious name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, next we have 2 presentations tonight. The first is the proposed Ridgecrest Regional Hospital Emergency Operations Overlay District, and this will be presented by Heather Spurlock.
Good evening. So the Ridgecrest Regional Hospital has requested a site. Okay. So the Ridgecrest Regional Hospital has requested a site plan for a new helistop. In order for the application to move forward, City Council needs to direct staff to initiate an overlay zone. The overlay zone would possibly limit building heights within the new proposed flight path. City Council has to direct staff to move forward with this application because the properties that would be impacted do not belong to the hospital. So tonight, the hospital is here to request that council move forward with the overlay process. If council chooses to proceed with this, it does not mean that you approve an overlay. It just gives staff the ability to move forward with the application at the cost of the hospital. When we move forward, that would identify whatever limitations or restrictions may come with the overlay zone. But you are not you're not approving an overlay. It's just deciding whether you want staff to proceed with the application. The application and any overlay would require additional hearings. So it would go to at least 2, 3. So that would provide opportunity for public comment and a lot of discussion on what that overlay would entail. So at this time, I'm going to ask that Mr. Suver from the hospital come up and tell you guys about their application.
400-page application, but I've opted to do more of a summary. So thank you for allowing us to present this evening. I also wanted to acknowledge City Manager Ron Strand and Heather for helping us with their guidance on this over the last couple of years. So as Heather mentioned, we're submitting a request for a zone overlay to protect medical care in our community. The idea of the zone overlay was suggested by the city attorney as the preferred solution to future planning for both the hospital and other businesses in our community. Our proposal has four main priorities. Number one, to ensure that our community has access to medical air transportation services when needed for critical patients. Number two, that our helicopter operations are safe for our transported patients, our medical personnel, and businesses in the area, and also make sure that Mercy Air will continue to remain in our area, having a helicopter readily available to us. Number three, that the hospital has some predictability and stability in executing our 20-year expansion plans, which includes the new emergency room as well as other building modifications. And lastly, and equally as important, that the zone overlay impedes only to the minimum extent possible surrounding properties. The attached application and supporting schedules are the result of 18 months of engineering and studies with the cost of the hospital right now of over $600,000. We believe, though, that this is one of the most important actions we need to do to ensure that we can respond to emergencies for our community where every minute counts, whether that be a baby in distress, a motor vehicle accident, a stroke patient, or any other medical reasons where air transport is necessary to save lives. Flight paths must be known, but also allow for pilot flexibility, as we are all aware that our weather dictates many different ways of coming into town. The details of the proposed overlay zone are documented in the application packet and were completed by folks far smarter than I am to get all the details down on this subject. I just wanted to close my comments with reiterating how important it will be to our community to protect the hospital's airspace, allowing us to take care of our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Suver.
Mayor, council members, if I may just very briefly, just so we can focus this on.
Go ahead.
What is here before you today is a request by the hospital for you to direct staff to initiate the process of an overlay zone or zoning change. As Heather identified, because the request involves properties not owned by the applicant would not be the proper person to initiate that type of a change, neither would staff. So the decision before you today is not really detailed oriented, but more in terms of if you would wish to have that project considered, the overlay, you would direct staff, give direction to staff to initiate the process. The cost of that process would be borne by the applicant. The process would go through the normal land use approval process, environmental review, planning commission meetings, public hearings, and would end up before you for a potential decision. Moving the project forward today, giving direction to staff, does not obligate you to approve it, does not obligate you to approve it in the manner that it's submitted. You will retain all the flexibility that goes with your decision about your zoning laws. So with that in mind, if you have any questions, I'll gladly answer them. But again, today is not the time to review things in detail and go through the plan of the overlay zone, and just whether or not you wish staff to initiate the process, and so it ends up before you probably in 6 to 8 months, estimating.
Okay, thank you. So we'll bring it back to council for any questions or comments that council members may have.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can you all hear me? I can't speak too loudly anymore. But I just want to make sure. There was 2 people who called me today living in Heritage Village who, as I recall, voiced some of those same concerns at the Planning Commission maybe 3 years ago. And I told them that this time is not the time to discuss that. This is the time where we are not going to question what is being done, how it's being done, so much as to begin the process to work it out and see how we can make what's best for the hospital, what's best for the community, and what's best for the city. I think at this point in time, there is only one question. Do we tell staff to proceed with the process, not how to come up with the answers and answer those questions today, but to do that in the future? I think it's important that the hospital knows that the city supports this. It is the process and how we're going to do it is what is in question. And so I want everybody to understand we're not giving approval. We're not saying no. We're simply saying, staff, get on with it.
I do have one question to the staff. So did we send notice to the affected areas?
We have not noticed anybody because we no, nobody was noticed yet because we are not moving forward with an application.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Burren, do you have any comments or anything to add?
I have no specific comments other than I agree with Peggy. This is a decision simply to allow staff to move forward.
Thank you. So I think my questions were answered very clearly from the previous speakers on as to that we're not approving anything within the hospital overlay at this point in time, that we're going to be moving forward, and then we'll be ironing out the issues and bringing it back to the public and some of the questions like Councilman Roger Rotman had just brought up. So if no one has any further comments, then at this point I would go ahead, did you?
Simply a consensus. I know that at least the mayor and Councilmember are in favor of initiating that, and if the two of you would indicate one way or the other on it, and then staff will have consensus.
Do we need a public comment?
You're good?
Yeah.
I'm good. So I think that's a consensus from the entire, minus our Councilman Blades, but okay.
Thank you very much.
We have an approval. So, okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, moving on to our second presentation tonight. This will be with Race Communications, and I believe we have our presenter coming to the mic. So, yes, sir.
Good evening. We also have a presentation that I believe was sent in earlier. Do I take that? No. There we go. All right. Again, good evening and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Raul Alcaraz and I'm the CEO of Race Communications. Race Communications is a licensed telecommunications company that provides fiber to the home networks here in California. We were founded in 1994, and for the last 20 years, we've been building fiber optic networks in broadband, unserved and underserved areas here in California to be able to provide very fast internet, television, and voice services. I'm very proud and blessed to say that it's been an amazing journey and process because with COVID hitting us in 2019 and the fact that everybody had to go home to be able to work and complete school and have access to health and medical needs, the fact that we were able to have close to 13,000 homes online that, if not for the fiber network that we built, would have still been on satellite and even some dial-up. So it's been proven that the networks we are building is a big part of the success of the residents that we bring these networks to. over 10 years ago, I was here in this community and worked with some different groups with the state of California to look at the opportunity of upgrading and bringing faster internet here to Ridgecrest. And at the time, it just was not financially viable for us to be able to come to town. But we've always had Ridgecrest on our radar because it is such a great community from the demographics, from the landscape, from the proximity to our networks, that it did make sense. And over time, we've worked with the Economic Development Group. We've met with them here in town as well over the last few years. And again, we couldn't find a way to make it work. But recently, we partnered with a financial partner who also recognized the need for bringing these fiber optic networks into communities just like Ridgecrest. And once we presented the opportunity to them, they absolutely agreed, got on board, and said, let's do it. I'll come back to the map in a moment because I wanted to come to kind of the steps that we normally take in our process. So number one, community selection. I can say that we selected the community over 10 years ago. We really saw the opportunity here in Ridgecrest. Engineering. The engineering started around April or May. And at that time, our teams started walking the streets, getting idea of what the network would look like, starting dialogue with folks here in the city on the process for submitting permits, for submitting plans, trying to see how we could work together, which has been an amazing partnership as well. We moved into permitting probably June, July, and started submitting packages so that way we could get the project going quickly. And I'm very happy to say that right around October 1st, we started mobilizing construction equipment, and by October 15th, we were putting shovels in the ground. So construction has begun. There is a fiber optic network being built here in Ridgecrest, and it is through the partnership of the city, the partnership with our construction group, and RACE, who we are very honored to be a part of it. This map here shows the areas that we will be building. Originally, based on our initial modeling, we had an initial area that was going to get built, which is there in red. And after working with the city on different requirements and needs, we recognized that we needed to expand a little further. So now you'll see that both the red and blue areas are getting built out with fiber optic networks capable of unlimited speeds. We will be starting with gigabit up, gigabit down. We'll be providing television and telephone services. So at this point, again, I'll just ring the bell. Construction has begun. We are on schedule to get the network up as quickly as possible, which will be in segments. So as that starts, we have a sales process that goes along with it. So what will happen is, as the construction crews are successful in getting the fiber in the ground, and we start coordinating efforts to do the outreach to the different areas, we'll start our sales process. What happens is the network will get built by certain service areas, which will be communicated to the residents so that they can go to our website and they could see what area they'll be in. It'll give some type of time frame for when they will be ready. We like to do a lot of community outreach. We get involved with town hall meetings. We like to invite the residents in so they can ask questions, so we can give information on how we do the installation process, how we provide the support, what we're capable of doing. And one of the big things is that we truly believe in becoming a part of the community. In all of the communities that we have built our networks in, we stay invested. We do, whether they're back to school backpack giveaways, whether they're trunk or treats for the kids around Halloween, whether it's being a part of the Christmas festivals. We like to come and introduce ourselves so that way the community sees that it's important to have two-way communication and relationships. So at this time, again, I just want, on behalf of the company, to thank you all for the opportunity, for the partnership, for working with us, and allowing us to bring our fiber optic network here to Ridgecrest.
Thank you, sir. So at this time, we'll bring back to the council for any questions or comments you might have. Peggy, you want to start?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. I think I understand correctly, going down China Lake Boulevard right now is MediaCom putting in new lines, additional lines.
That's Race.
That's you guys?
Correct.
Okay.
That's our
because
contractor,
I
HP
was told when I asked, I stopped and asked them, and I said, who is this? And I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank goodness. Now that answers my one question. Then the second question I have is on page 2 of our statement that says the city also, as a part of their design standards update projects, currently in the process to add standards for communication, conduit installation for existing and all future planned subdivision. The key here, thus allowing the installation of future backbone without the need for street cutting. How do we determine what the future backbone is? If we don't do it, are we liable for the costs if it isn't done correctly? What does that mean?
No, what it is under new developments, if you're having a new housing tract being built in, we'll just require as the development process for them to put a conduit in for any future expansion of Race or even MediaCom. Yeah, we're currently redoing our design standards at this point in time.
That's a very common practice for cities to make that requirement for new development, so that way any future communications could be supported without additional interruption to the streets.
If at some point in time you decide you want to add another area, another conduit, whatever, that's at your cost, and any imposition on the public of cutting pavement, et cetera, would be your burden.
Absolutely.
Okay, I understand. I just wanted to make sure we weren't responsible for what hasn't been done.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Breeden, during the next presentation, Mr. Reed will be explaining a little bit about our future design standards on new development and how
I
we'll...
saw that.
Correct, okay.
Yep, I did.
He'll go into further
Okay.
detail on that.
Okay.
Did you have any questions?
No.
Mayor Brood, any questions?
One fairly straightforward question, that is, Race Communications is the builder. Are they also the provider? Are you going to be the specific end user provider that our citizens are going to contract with for services?
Absolutely. Race Communications is the carrier, so we do build, operate, and support our own networks.
And how many networks do you currently operate in the state of California?
We are currently in about 40 different service areas, all the way up in Grass Valley, California, over to Bridgeport, down the 395 through Johannesburg, Randsburg, down through Tehachapi, Mojave, down to Los Angeles, down to San Diego, and then back up through San Jose, San Francisco, and so we cover both metro areas, we cover rural areas. Like I said, we've been doing this for a very long time, and we're very proud to provide the services that we do.
Fantastic. And then with the exception of competitive interest, is there any other impeding of other current ISP providers that is created through this process?
I don't understand. Can you ask the question again, Mayor Brown?
No problem. Excluding competitive interest, okay?
Yeah.
I.e., as a competitor, is there any other impositions which will be applied to other providers which exist?
No, not at all. This has come up in several different conversations. We are very familiar with the process of building networks in areas where there are other providers and competition, and being licensed by the California Public Utilities Commission, we have very strict requirements we have to operate by, and so we make sure that we work very well even with our competition, and we follow all the regulatory rules. We often even sometimes sell our services to our competitors, because sometimes it's easier for that to happen than for them to build in an area that we're in.
Thank you, sir. And then the last question is, I believe I know the answer, but for the public record, what is the estimated build-out time?
The estimated build-out time. Well, in the construction world, it's a moving target. I would like to have it done in less than 24 months. And I believe that we're going to be able to meet that target very easily.
Okay, thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Okay, very good. I think he just asked the question I had too, and I was wondering where we sat on that timetable, or is in regards to the build-up.
So I often, this is kind of my tagline is, there's always going to be somebody first, and there's always going to be somebody last. Because as we build through, the residents that happen to be closest to the network connectivity that's getting turned on, or the service area that is able to get constructed quicker than maybe another area that we may be having permit issues or construction issues, will get turned up. So it truly is a moving target, but one of our goals is to make sure that we are providing good communication to everybody. So even though you may be last, at least we're letting you know that you're last. So,
Okay, very good.
all right.
All right, well, thank you for your presentation tonight, and we appreciate it. And so I don't believe there's any action needed on this, so
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we will move to public comments of items not on the agenda. Persons wishing to address the council on matters that are within the council's jurisdiction and do not already appear on the agenda may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council may not take action on an item that does not appear on this agenda. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. The public comment section of the agenda is limited to a total of 1 hour. Each speaker is asked to provide his or her name. Do we have any public comment? We will start with the phones. Okay, seeing no public comment from the phones, we'll come back to any comments from the floor. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to council announcements. Do we have any council announcements tonight?
Petroglyph Festival this Friday, Saturday, 5th and 6th. And California Welcome Center, they're having a grand opening ceremony on the 5th at 5 p.m. So it would be nice to support these two events. And one more thing, I attended the groundbreaking of Ordnance Test Support and Technical Services Laboratory on the base on the 26th. So that was a good experience.
Very good.
That's 44 million project.
Wow.
And there is another groundbreaking of which I attended, which is a 54 million project.
Very good. A lot of work going on. Mayor Bruin, do you have anything to add?
I just wanted to add a big compliment to our entire community and to the staff at the Desert Empire Fairgrounds for yet another wonderful Desert Empire Fair. They put in a lot of work, and I got to meet a lot of faces in the parking lot, and thank you to everyone who said hello. And it was another great community event, and I think the biggest turnout we've seen in years. And thank you to the whole community for coming out and supporting our fair.
Very good. I'd like to piggyback on that. I spent 3 days out there at the junior livestock show, and I've attended it in the past, but this year is kind of special because I had a grandson that was showing a sheep and a hog and a calf. But they had a really good turnout on that side of the fair too, and a lot of young youth out there working and showing their animals, and a lot of participation they brought in from outside of our area, from the Central Valley and ag, or the livestock community and around Bakersfield. And so, but it was a lot of fun. Everybody looked like they were having a great time. A lot of the public was coming out from the fair and getting to walk through and see all the animals and touch and pet, but it's really a great time for the community. So I concur. So, okay, very good. We will move on to the consent calendar. All items listed on consent are considered to be routine and non-controversial by city staff. Consent items may be approved by one motion if no member of the council or audience wishes to comment or ask questions. If comment or discussion is desired by anyone, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the city council concerning the item before action is taken. I will now read the one item. Item number 3, approved draft minutes of the Ridgecrest City Council dated October 20th, 2021. Does any
I
member...
make a motion.
Well, I'll ask real quick. Does any members of the council wish to have an item pulled? Seeing none, does any member of the public wish to have an item pulled? We do have a call, so we'll go ahead and take that call and see if it pertains to pulling an item. Caller, go ahead. Caller, go ahead.
My discussion item will be after you bring up item number 4 for comment.
Okay, so you can hold your thoughts, and there's no wish to pull any items. We'll look for a motion.
Make a motion to approve a consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Mayor Bruin,
Aye.
Mr. Heyman,
Aye.
Mr. Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Ms. Breeden.
Aye.
4 ayes, 1 absent with Mr. Blades.
Okay, moving on to item number 4, a resolution of the Ridgecrest City Council to appropriate a portion of the American Rescue Plan Act funds and authorize the city manager to execute the attached broadband installation agreement. This will be presented by Mr. Reed.
I'm going to mix it up tonight. Come over here so I don't have to break my neck to look at you all. Good evening, Council. Yes, as you graciously spoke, we are here to present the appropriation of funds for ARP. Over the past 6 months, 6 to 8 months, however long it's been now, we've been working with RACE to figure out all the logistics as far as how we get the whole city built out. We have come to agreement. In your packet, there's a draft agreement. There is an Exhibit A which shows the map area. The blue area is the area in which was negotiated for the final build out. And the major specifics of this are Basically, the city is providing these funds to reimburse inspection costs. Inspection costs are going to be basically for our inspectors to be out there, witness borings, witness micro trenching, witness excavation, witness backfill, replacement of sidewalks after they've gone under them, replacement of miscellaneous other roadway features. The city also looked into the prevailing wage rights for this to make sure that we're in no violation of any laws, in which we determined we were not, based on Labor Code Section 1720C3A B I. As this is considered de minimis because it's less than 2% of the proposed project cost. With this, the city has also agreed to look at updating our standards. We're currently in the middle of our design standard redesign, for lack of a better term, because they're so old. So starting from scratch and basically building from the bottom up. And I just want to reiterate that this commitment to look at design standards is in no way to benefit one communication company. It's to benefit the city as a whole, and to take the most stringent development standard, whether that comment comes from a MediaCom or that comment comes from a race. We want to take the most stringent and the one that's going to best prepare the city to not have to cut streets in the future to aid in installation in the future. It'll not only will it save costs for developers in the long run for cutting and doing things like that, but it'll also aid the community because there'll be conduits there for once houses go up that they can get communications networking to those facilities. With that, RACE has agreed, obviously, for a complete build out of the city, and that we will provide, they're going to aid us in providing the basic specifications for these communication standards. I'm by no means an expert in what a communication company needs. I'm a streets, a roads guy, and a water guy. That's been my background. So they are also going to install drops to the majority of our city parks and all the ones that are obviously within the build-out area, which I believe all the parks are, and to our major arterial intersections to where we'll have capability if we ever do a signal synchronization project or anything like that, that there'll be communication and fiber backbone there for us to utilize so we can control our signals remotely from the office. This will also aid us in traffic flow patterns. It'll aid us in a numerous amount of things. It'll allow consultants to look at our signals and better aid us with timing from a remote basis, saving travel costs, saving things like that. They have also agreed to provide the city with 10 years of free internet with 27 IP allocations and no data consumption caps. And I think if anybody who was during the pandemic saw that there was a need for some communication, that it's the download speeds, however, in some areas may be great, but upload speeds saw some room for improvement. So we think that this is a viable project because it's a broadband network in which is specifically stated under ARP funds. And we look forward to getting this done and seeing the build out of the city and using communications to the best of our ability. And with that, I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. So we'll bring it back to council for any questions for Mr. Reed. Peggy, we can start with you. No questions?
I do have a couple of questions. Mr. Reed, the purpose of this request is $150 for inspection costs. So what kind of inspection is that, and whom do we pay this amount?
So essentially what that is RACE would be required to pay for any outside inspection costs. So right now with my staffing commitments for paving projects, development projects, and things of that nature, we didn't have enough staff right now to oversee the amount of crews they were having. So this is going to offset the cost of augmenting our staff basically with an inspection firm. And then after that, once I believe we have staff available, it will then be backfilled with some of our staff. So it's basically to offset their cost of what they would have to pay us for staffing to inspect the installation of the new build.
Okay. So that would be somebody local, or do we have?
So right now, currently, we have a contract for inspection services in which council, is the council? I think the council approved that already, right? Yeah, they did. Approved for Wildan Engineering. And then obviously it'll be backfilled with the staff that's currently in office.
And the other 100,000 you said is to facilitate infrastructure installation.
Oh, and I totally forgot to mention that. So yeah, so what that is with Race's build out, they're obviously within our city right away. So we wanted to allocate an additional $100,000 to actually have the ability to utilize their contractors that know how to install this, that are here on site. It'll save us mobilization costs, things like that, at a time that's not going to impede on their schedule for Race's build out, but to get the fiber to a point in our lot, so like in a park. Obviously, we don't want to put backbone to somewhere where it can be stolen and have things out in the open. So it'll get it from their drop point to the parcel to our termination point. So that's what that's for.
Thank you, sir.
Just to add one thing, that any costs that we have when we hire HP Communications will be at a prevailing wage cost.
Correct. We have a proposal that specifically states that in writing that they are following prevailing wage laws.
Okay. Thank you.
You mind if I go ahead, Mr. Heyman?
Go ahead, Mayor Bruin.
Thank you, sir. So, Travis, just to clarify, from a technical perspective, we're actually not providing funds directly to Race in any form. We are actually just allocating ARP funds within our own budget to provide for the inspections and for the build-outs, correct?
That is the way I understand it. It essentially is capping it.
Okay. And my understanding, again, from the ARP funds is that the telecom component requires that it be to unserved or underserved areas, or areas in which the credit union, sorry, there you go, my brain's in conference mode, or where the city has reasonable challenges with its existing communications. And this whole proposal, the Race proposal, addresses that substantially, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, sir. I have no further comments.
Thank you. I have no further questions for myself, so we will open up to public comment. So we'll start with the phones. Do we have any public comment? Let's see. Caller, go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Del Heinz. I'm an advisor for MediaCom here in California. I want to thank Mayor Bruin and the council members and City Manager Strand for their time this evening. My first question would be, this morning early, we sent email letters to the council and to Mr. Strand. I know Mr. Strand has received it as well as the city clerk, and I just want to address a few portions of that letter in tonight's comments, if I may. The purpose of this letter is to applaud the city staff's proposal, resolution number 21, to use ARPA funds and updated city inspection practices for Race Communications to expand broadband to all unserved and underserved areas of the city. It also appears that Race is being granted access to moratorium streets in the city, which other providers may not have access to. Looking forward, MediaCom is looking forward to accessing the same funding and policy considerations offered to Race, with the goal of a robust competition and enhanced broadband to all Ridgecrest homes and businesses. We would note that no portion of the city, by the way, served by MediaCom meets the definitions of unserved or underserved as specified by the federal rules of use for ARPA funds, and that's very simple. Unserved U.S. Treasury interim final rule provides that investments in broadband made in areas that are currently unserved or underserved, in other words, lacking a wireline connection that delivers minimum speeds of 25 megs down and 3 megs up. And MediaCom offers 1 gig service ubiquitously across the Ridgecrest market. We would also respectfully suggest that there is no urgency to adopt this resolution tonight, given it bypasses the city-established process for community input on the use of ARPA funds and applies to costs that will be incurred over a 3-year period, not up front. Minicom and other providers must be allowed to participate in the development of the citywide construction standards for communications conduit to assure competitive access to city homes and businesses. The resolution provides RACE with ARPA funding to pay for city inspections of the RACE construction processes and commits funds to facilitate the installation of fiber to existing city facilities. The broadband installation agreement appears to expand the original RACE construction footprint, obligates the city to use ARPA funds for inspection costs for RACE, protect and city internet connections, and to provide both citywide development standards for underground and communications conduits and a variety of services to the city. The RACE construction footprint significantly overlaps the moratorium street map that you currently provide Minicom and is being granted access to these streets for its project. We're concerned about that. And if we're wrong, we'd like to discuss it in detail. Minicom does agree that the ARPA funds should be used to facilitate broadband construction, consistent with Treasury regulations. Given no portion of the city served by Minicom meets the definition of unserved or underserved, as specified by the Treasury regulations, it is unclear how or if ARPA funds may lawfully be used to support the RACE project. We also agree that giving RACE rapid prepaid city inspections is a step in the right direction, whether or not ARPA funds are used for this purpose. But finally, we agree that the access to moratorium streets would help facilitate broadband service upgrades by all providers. However, these resources and policies must be available to all parties and all providers in the city to fully address unserved and underserved areas to comply with applicable law. Just a few more statements, if I may. City decisions on using ARPA funds are subject to community input for city policy. Using ARPA funds to pay for city inspections on behalf of private companies and city internet facilities may be appropriate policy decision, but community input would solidify that determination. Finally, the city staff asked RACE to provide the specifications for the citywide development standards, underground and conduit standards for current and future projects. This process must include us and others to assure equal access to city rights-of-way as required by law. All providers use unique and different system designs and construction standards, and any citywide specifications must reflect that standard. Mediacom and its engineers commit to participating in good faith in this process. And finally, if I may, Mediacom has been a proud participant and corporate citizen in Ridgecrest for 25 years and offers 1 gig speed throughout the city over its advanced fiber-based system. Gigabit plus fiber solutions reaching speeds of 10 gigs, symmetrical and beyond. Minicom Business offers the business sector in your town a trusted source for fast and reliable services. We've included some talking points in the letters we sent to the council. And in closing, if I may, Minicom looks forward to having access to the same funding and forward-looking city policies the city is proposing for RACE. I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
We do. You're welcome. We do have other comments. So does anybody wish to comment on that particular?
I have a question. On the first and the second paragraph, you said Mediacom looks forward to accessing the same funding and policy considerations offered to RACE with the goal of, are they prohibited or denied access to the same things that RACE is? Because it implies that they may not be.
Well, I think the city staff has come to you to complete this fiber optic broadband project. To date, Mediacom has no project that they've approached the city with. We do believe this project is going to, one, expand broadband services within our community. It will provide services to the underserved to some degree. It'll allow competition within the city. So Mediacom has no current project that they've brought to us for consideration. This project was brought to us prior to the ARPA funds being issued, and this was staff's consideration in negotiating with RACE for full build-out. Now, as for any sort of consideration when it comes to design standards, of course, we're going to ask RACE about what the future design standards of fiber optics will be, just like we would ask Mediacom. As council is aware, we're currently updating our design standards at this point in time. And so there will be public meetings on those design standards, and we do encourage Mediacom to participate in those meetings so we can get their input on what they may require for their services on new development.
I'm just concerned that Mediacom, maybe I'm being a little oversensitive here, but Mediacom is implying that they have not had that same access. But if you haven't come and asked for anything, it's hard to give them access they haven't sought.
Correct.
Okay.
I think one of the other, I did meet with Dell, and one of their concerns was the street moratorium that we have for 5 years. And I did mention to him and one of his other representatives that they have an issue within our community where they have a service that is lacking, that needs an upgrade, that Mr. Reed and I would be more than willing to work with them to see exactly what we may need, what accommodations we may make for them to improve their network within certain parts of town. I did bring to their attention one portion of town that I've heard anecdotally has an issue, and I told them, if you wish to come to us with a project that involves streets that have a moratorium, please bring it to us, because if you got 200-300 customers that you're not serving well, then bring it to our attention. They did mention that they had been deprived or denied an encroachment permit some years ago. However, that was on China Lake Boulevard in Caltrans easement. So to my knowledge, in the last 4.5 years as city manager, I've not been approached by Mediacom for them wanting to upgrade their service to the community, and were denied an encroachment permit because of the moratorium standards. So if they wish to come to us, like I told them, we're more than happy to entertain them just as equally as we have with RACE.
One other thing to add with the moratorium street thing. A moratorium street is not basically saying you cannot go into this street. Obviously, PG&E, IWV Water, SC&E, they provide a service that's vital to this community, and anything that's under pressure or has electricity, as we saw over on Las Flores, that can cause a fire or can leak. There's emergency access at all times. So we don't specify against that, and nor do we say that if it's a moratorium street, you can't enter it. What it basically says is that there's enhanced standards for repair if you go into it at that time. Now, in RACE's case, too, to show that we did this, we just paved down street. We worked with them. Their first proposed alignment went right down this brand new pavement, to which we said absolutely not. So they moved everything behind sidewalk. So they've been working with us as well to try to avoid our new paved streets. Now, ultimately, like Mr. Strand said, we're looking at is where's the benefit to the community? Yeah, we've been doing a lot to our roads, but we have the ability now with our slurry machine to cover up a lot of these trench lines and things like that, and to enhance and prepare the surface and protect that surface as it goes down the road and potentially degrades. So I think we would be doing our community a disservice to not allow Mediacom or RACE to go into these moratorium streets under certain circumstances, as long as we've looked at everything and decided that, they've got no other choice but they have to go into the street, then they have to go into the street. That's just, it's just a fact of it. So.
Thank you, Travis.
Mayor Heyman, may I respond to Councilmember Breeden's question or comment, if I may?
Go ahead.
Good evening, Councilmember. Thank you for your time. The fact is, we just learned about 2 weeks ago that the ARPA funds were being considered to be utilized by the city of Ridgecrest out of their $6.1 million that's been granted to them by the federal government. And it takes a little longer than a week and a half to 2 weeks to be able to put together a project request. I guess my question would be, if we came to the city with a legitimate concern and a bona fide project that we need your support financially as with ARPA funds, would you accept that opportunity from us?
I can answer that. I think that staff would consider it and would bring it to council for their consideration.
Fantastic. That's all we're asking for. If I can kind of put this in perspective for everyone on the council and on the phone and on the internet, all we're seeking is a level playing field so we can compete effectively. We have had competition in our line of business for 25 years, and we will continue to provide services in Ridgecrest for 25 more years. We relish the opportunity to get better.
Just add one more comment regarding the justification of these funds. One, we do believe that it is clearly square in the intent of the ARPA legislation that broadband expansion, broadband to the underserved, squarely fits it. There are also other funding mechanisms. This is a capital project that does qualify under the ARPA funds also. So we could look at this a couple different ways.
Okay. Very good. Okay. So we're going to move on to the next caller.
Hello.
Caller, go ahead.
Yes. My name is Mike Neal, and I'm grateful for the input from the gentleman from MediaCom because it kind of cemented some of my thoughts that I was considering, having not actually heard of this being discussed until tonight, not having had a chance to look at the agenda. But when you look at the use of these funds and what has been stated several times now, that these funds are supposed to be used for unserved or underserved parts of the community. And I believe if you look within the boundaries of Ridgecrest, I would challenge / welcome anybody on city staff or the council to prove to the funding agency, and i.e. also the citizens in this town who know that these funds could be used for possibly other projects other than trying to increase competition in the broadband area. I don't think that there's anybody in the boundaries of the city of Ridgecrest who's unserved or could even be called underserved in the area of having access to the internet. I myself, where I live, I actually at this point in time have the choice of two services that I could use to get internet service, and MediaComs is certainly more than fast enough for your average household user, for sure. And you have Digital 395 that was touted years ago, and I'm not sure who actually uses that, but that was there to provide high-speed internet to business communities and hospitals and things like that. So just to be upfront and honest about the situation and the conditions for receiving the funds, I don't think that these funds are being used for anything that falls within the guidelines of how they're stated to be used. And unless you could say that we have unserved, which I doubt if we have any unserved in Ridgecrest, and I don't know how you define underserved. If they have internet access at all, it's hard to say they're underserved. So I think you need to prove that before you use these funds or this project in that fashion. And I'm going to be asking the appropriate agency if you have done so.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Next caller. Okay, seeing no more comments from the phones, any comments from the floor? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for a motion.
I do have one question.
Questions or motion?
On the same lines, MediaCom pointed out that they have 1 gig speeds provided to the community. So how are we confirming that we are not unserved and not underserved? Because the interim final rule clearly says provided the eligible investments in broadband are those that are designed to provide services meeting adequate speed and are provided to unserved and underserved households and businesses. So how are we meeting that criteria?
Yeah, I think that it does meet it. It doesn't have to be, I do believe we have an underserved community. When we had the pandemic, we had a significant number of people who were having a hard time connecting to the internet. We have a high-tech base, and when we had majority of those people that were working from home, there were a significant number of issues with connectivity. So I think that in of itself is underserved.
I can also add that, speaking just personally, I've been a MediaCom customer for the last 6 years, and and when I was at home, when I saw people there, although the download speeds many times are fine and dandy, it's the upload speeds that we see that where I feel that the community is underserved. The upload speeds are what I exhibited and saw problems with, trying to upload big files for work, things like that. I felt that there was a need there, and that's where I think that we will be better serving the community.
And
I
if I
just
may,
want to make sure we are following the guidelines. So I think obviously we'll have an audit later on. We don't want to get into trouble later on. So.
and if I may, thank you, Councilman Wyman. And as the city manager pointed out, there are many prongs to eligibility for these type of projects. Underserved broadband is just one of them. This project also obviously is going to help with negative economic impacts from the pandemic. It allows assisting households, small businesses, tourism, travel, all of that. Having a robust broadband network in the city will assist the city in recovering from the COVID, and that is the intent of the legislature. It also is a capital project to some extent, which also is an approved use of funds. And obviously, the MediaCom recognizes, since they're asking for the same funds to be used when they bring a project forward.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, sir, but we are taking the plea under broadband. But you are saying, you are talking about other things also. It comes under COVID affected, right?
Correct. I mean, there's many ways that we could justify supporting this project.
Okay. So
we chose broadband because that is what I believe is the most prominent use of that fund, is to expand our broadband within the community. We could also, this is also a capital project. We can use the funding for capital projects within the community. So we could put this under several different, or at least a couple different funding theories to be able to use this money for this project. But broadband fits the best.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure we are doing the due diligence,
Yes,
because
we are.
the rule clearly says, so we just want to make sure we are doing the right thing.
Correct.
Okay, if no further questions from the council, we'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
Mayor Bruin,
Aye.
Mr. Heyman,
Aye.
Mr. Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Ms. Breeden.
Aye.
4 ayes with Mr. Blades absent.
Okay, moving on to item number 5, discussion regarding the Board of Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. And that will be presented by me. So we have not met since the before this meeting, so I don't have anything new to report. So every other meeting is going to be a little bit light because we haven't met, so I don't need to report on the past stuff that I reported. So I'll entertain any questions from the council members.
I have no questions.
Okay, hearing none, then we will move on to item number 6, a resolution of the City Council adopting a position description for senior engineering into the classification plan and amending the mid-management salary schedule. This will be presented by Mr. Reed.
Good evening. I'm back. So this is we're adding a position classification. This is simply to expand the need for future staffing, as not to change the current level of staffing, so not to hire another body, but rather to have flexibility. One of our senior staff members is choosing to retire at the end of the year, so we are just making sure that with everybody out there looking for work right now and all the things going on, we want to make sure that we can fill a vacancy based on experience and not be limited to a certain number of candidates. One of the questions that came up is having a staff PE. I'm working diligently on finishing mine, but we currently have Willdan Engineering as staff augmentation, so the city will not be without a professional engineer that we can utilize for staff needs. And essentially, we're just basically broadening the scope so we can have a broader pool of applicants for the upcoming vacancy that we know we're going to have to fill. And with that, if you guys have any questions about staffing or how the job description was formed or anything like that, I'm open for questions.
Thank you. We'll bring it back to the council for any questions for Mr. Reed.
The only thing not a question so much as well thought out. I thought this was an appropriate time to expand the ability to deal with something that may happen in the future, and I congratulate you for coming up with this and presenting it to us in a manner that's easily understood and doesn't affect anything other than what we can do in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Yes.
It was just brought to our attention that there's a caller on the line for the last item because of the delay on YouTube. So would you mind pausing this and allowing the person to speak?
We can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, caller, go ahead.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you for taking the step backward. I noticed that either I missed it or you didn't ask for public comment at all. But anyway, we're going to do that on the Groundwater Authority right now. What I have to point out is something that is certainly, I'm pretty sure, has not come to the attention of the council members. I don't recall it being brought out in any discussions about the Groundwater Authority's reports on the groundwater storage in the basin. So I want to point out that in the Groundwater Authority GSP report, the big I guess you'd call boogeyman in the closet was they say that we had almost 25,000 acre-feet deficit of groundwater storage in the basin at that point in time. Now, that data was drawn out of data that they presented in the report from years 2011 to 2015. As I stated in a letter that I submitted on this, it's a puzzle to me why they didn't go on and use data from 2020. But in any case, the April 2020 annual report of the Groundwater Authority then uses data from years 2016 to 2020. They don't break it down to years of data. They report each particular year, and then they sum them all up for the whole 5 years. But all you have to do is average it. When you average it, you get minus 7,700 some odd acre-feet per year average in groundwater storage. Now, compare 25,000, almost 25,000 to 7,700 some odd. That's a huge difference. That's a big, major discrepancy in what's being presented in publicly available reports to both the public and the DWR as to the deficit in groundwater storage in our basin. Now, the huge number that I mentioned previously of 25,000 was, of course, the basis for calling this a critically overdrafted basin. I seriously doubt if we had been telling DWR that we had 7,000, that we'd be in critical overdraft, that we would be in the position that we are right now. So it's pretty clear that the GA cannot come up with any consistent numbers as to how much water is or is not being drawn out of the basin in this valley. And just another example of the big rush to charge right ahead with the label of critical overdraft. Let's charge forward with that. And now that they've gone forward and they're charging us huge fees, Now they're basically saying, "Oh no, it's not 25,000. It's over little under 8,000." So we need some people on the GA to answer up to this and explain why all of a sudden over 5 years' time, using what should have been much longer periods of time of averaging the water use out of the basin, that we're getting such drastically different numbers, because this does not formulate trust in what the GA is presenting to the public and to the state as far as what's going on with our basin. This needs to be fixed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Any other public comment regarding item number 5? Okay, seeing none, we'll return to item number 6. And I believe we were at questions for Mr. Reed from the council. So do we have any other comments from council members? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to public comment. So we'll open for public comment on item number 6. Okay, seeing no public comment on the lines, any public comment from the floor? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mayor Bruin,
Aye.
Mr. Heyman,
Aye.
Mr. Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Ms. Breeden.
Aye.
4 ayes, Mr. Blades absent, motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item number 7. So we'll begin with opening the public hearing on item number 7. A continued public hearing and resolution approval of the City Council of the City of Ridgecrest, California, summarily vacating a portion of the east right-of-way of South Downs Street between Wasp Avenue and 165 feet plus or minus north of the center line of Wild Rose Avenue. Next, we'll receive a staff report from Mr. Reed, so I'm glad you stayed put.
Good evening again. Council, this is a continuation, obviously, of the public hearing from last time. Previously, you authorized staff for the intent to vacate this portion. Staff then took it to Planning Commission, verified that it was excess and that it was in conformance with the circulation plan, to which it was. Now we are bringing it back to you for the finalization. We continued it previously, was waiting on a few utilities to respond back. I have received comments back from a majority of the utilities, to which I have not received comment back from 2. To my knowledge, it's customary once you've set a date and time, and we've extended it now and given them additional time. If they would have had an issue with it, they would have said something. I had to do you got given a additional legal description. Upon further staff investigation, we found an existing sewer line that lies within the portion in which we were wishing to vacate. Staff kicked around the idea of if we should make that private, issue an easement to the house that it served, but we felt that a private citizen maintaining a sewer main and manhole is not consistent with how the city should operate in staff's opinion. Therefore, we have added a reservation into the legal description, and essentially what it does is it reserves the portion in parcel C, the northerly 142 feet where that sewer line lies, that it allows us access to maintain, remodel, install, fix, anything like that sewer line. So, and with that, if you guys have any questions on the vacation or on the process in which staff followed, I am open for questions.
Okay, next we're going to move to public comment. So we'll open public comment on item number 7. Okay, seeing no public comment on the lines, any public comment on the floor? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to, well, I believe not seeing any public comment, we'll close the public hearing at this point, and then we will bring it back to the council. So at this point, we're going to close the public hearing, and now we'll bring it back to the council for any comments and a motion. Mayor Bruin?
The only comment I have is the resolution indicates a $2,500 estimated cost. But again, to be clear, that's being paid by the requesting parties, which we are vacating the property, correct?
Yes, so staff has been tracking its time that they have spent on this, and essentially if a deposit hasn't been collected yet, in my infinite wisdom of the amount of work I've been doing lately, we'll figure out what staff time is owed, and before we file the recorded documents, we'll make sure that fee is paid.
Thank you, sir.
But to answer your question, $2,500 was a deposit that we could work off of.
Okay, no further questions. Do we have a motion?
So move.
I'll do the second.
Mayor Bruin?
Aye.
Mr. Heyman?
Aye.
Mr. Rajaratnam?
Aye.
Ms. Braden?
Aye.
4 ayes, Mr. Blades absent. Motion does carry.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Okay, next we will move to committee reports. So we're going to begin with Parks and Recreation, and let me see here. Maybe I don't have it. We may be relying on Narissa a little more than normally. I have my notes here with all the, but I'm not seeing it. So we'll punt, and we'll have you come up and kind of help add on to some of the meeting. We had a good meeting. Okay, thank you. So would you like to start with some of the highlights about the grants? That was our first.
So we actually discussed a couple of different grants. One is the pool grant. I'll just give the quick update on that. We still haven't heard anything from them. We spoke to California Consulting last week when we were going over the Clean California grant, and I asked them if they had done any awarding or have heard anything about it, and they still have not. So we're still in the waiting process of that. We went over project components that came out for the Clean California grant based on the survey that was set out at the fairgrounds. We got feedback from 14 community members. A lot of them were in line with project components that the staff also agree with as being good upgrades to the Leroy Jackson complex. Some of those were completing the walking path, adding shade trees, drinking fountains. People would like to see a playground put over near the softball fields, shade structures, educational signage, things like that. We haven't ruled anything in or out on the project. We're waiting. This weekend will be set up at Petroglyph. Saturday and Sunday, somebody from the Quality of Life Committee, including myself and Megan, will be out there. We're taking shifts and taking turns. So after we gather information from that survey, which is going to be prioritizing the list of community feedback that we got from the fairgrounds, then we will get together with a consultant and kind of start narrowing down what project components are going to be in, which ones we'll take out, and start working on our design. And then we discussed that I will be coming back in front of council on December 1st with a public hearing for CDBG grant money for FY22, FY23.
Okay. I'll add that the movie night was a tremendous success. There was 150 to 200 participants for the movie. We'd like to give a good shout out to Alta One Credit Union for their sponsorship of it and providing popcorn, and there were vendors, Ven.
We had Ven, La Fiesta, the taco truck, and Shaved Ice that participated.
Okay, and so that was quite a turnout. So we discussed some of the advertising areas that that you have utilized up to this point, and trying to narrow down what seems to be working the best, because that's a good turnout, and keeping our focus on those areas that get out to the public and promote this. That ended the movie night for this year, and the next movie night will start back in the spring, depending upon weather. So like we decided, somewhere around March, April, but weather dependent. But we will let everybody know about that as it moves forward. You talked about the skate park and the shade structure, and we talked about where location would be important for not inhibiting future growth or expansion of the skate park. And is that about it?
Yeah.
I think so. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for stepping up and helping go over the meeting. So, okay. I think that's all we have for the quality of life meeting. And that's the only meeting that's on the agenda tonight. So with that, we will move on to other committees, boards, or commissions.
Mr. Heyman?
Yes, go ahead.
We didn't mention the tree lighting. If you can just make sure to reiterate that the tree lighting ceremony, I believe, is for December the 3rd. Is that correct? Or Narissa? We didn't mention that.
Yeah, and we didn't.
Yes, the tree lighting will be scheduled for Friday, December 3rd, and we're working on setting up some ornament decorating for the kids. We're going to have a couple of the Parks and Rec part-time staff dressed as elves, and we're planning on finding a Santa to be outside and hoping to coordinate some music and stuff going on too.
And the time hasn't been set yet.
No, we haven't set the time just yet. I'll work on getting an invitation and save the date out to everybody within the next week.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Bruin. Okay, and we will now move on to other committees, boards, or commissions. We'll start with Councilman Rajaratnam. Ms. Breeden? Nope. Mayor Bruin?
I got nothing. It's the beginning of the month.
And I don't have anything to add. So, all right, moving on to city manager report. Mr. Strand?
Yeah, just as a reminder, staff will be bringing our project list / workshop for the ARPA funds during the next city council meeting on November 17th. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. And moving on to future agenda items. Do we have any future agenda items anybody would wish to present?
The council will be considering a claim in closed session at the next council meeting, which the city received recently.
Okay, moving on to mayor and council comments.
I'd like to remind everyone that we had the Petra Festival this weekend. There's a wine walk on Balsam Street. Many of the businesses are participating, and we expect a lot of new visitors in town. So if you see people you don't know, say hello, come down and participate and support our businesses as well as the RACVB and the festival. So enjoy it all. It's going to be a huge weekend.
I want to say Mr. City Manager, Mr. Strand and Travis Reed, they spoke at Rotary. They gave an update on roads and other important matters, so that was very informative. And I got a couple of appreciations from the public about the work being done on the roads. So just want to pass that. They said we are doing a good job. So thank you, Mr. Reed, for working on that.
Mayor Bruin?
Just a couple quick comments. One, I want to reiterate our disappointment, obviously, at seeing the old mini mart and Fast Trip fire this weekend. It's sad to see anything like that, but it really does stress the importance of fire safety and our need to maintain our fire services in our community. I also wanted to quickly thank the community for the continued support on all of our communication efforts and getting involved in our social media, talking to us, communicating with us. We are listening, and I hope that you see that we are continuing to take those inputs and they're turning into good things. And finally, I would reiterate that with our decisions this evening. This is a big step, completing the final mile for our community. with access to the Digital 395 backbone, which was installed nearly a decade ago. These are the kind of positive steps that we're continuing to take as a council, and I can't express enough my excitement over it. And finally, I just on a personal note, it has been nothing but pleasure to be able to promote and discuss my community in the city of Ridgecrest while I've been away at travel this week, and nothing but just so much exciting times to be able to be stopped and asked about how's it going and what is it going on. And all I get to say is all these positive things from our police vehicles to the fiber that we're continuing to work on for our community. So I'm very excited and appreciative of our council and our staff for everything we're getting done. And thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd just like to add, on top of what Nurse had brought up earlier, that we will be, Parks will be manning a booth out at the Petroglyph Festival. And Narissa and Megan, Will, Mayor Bruin, myself, we are all going to take turns, I think it's 3-hour increments or so out at the Petroglyph Festival to man the survey out there. So to everyone that's listening out there, stop by, take a look at the grant and the projects, and put your input out, or give us your input so that we can have that. And that's all I have to add.
Would you add the Welcome Center? Remind everybody that about Friday, the Welcome Center.
It's at.
Yeah, we do have the grand opening of the Welcome Center this Friday at 5 o'clock.
Is it Thursday or Friday?
Friday
Okay.
at 5 o'clock, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, so if we don't have any other comments, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, guys. Have a great evening. I'll see you next week. I'll see Peggy tomorrow.